I often wonder how it is possible that my life has changed so much, going from the small village in Romania, where time always seemed to flow at the same pace, to this existence made of contradictions and hidden desires. My name is Sophia. I'm 30 years old, and since I was a child, I've always dreamed of escaping, of discovering what lies beyond the known horizon. I worked hard. Every penny I saved was a step closer to my dream, and in the end, I made it. A few years ago, I moved to Italy, finding work as a waitress in a restaurant. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing, while for us it is fundamental. It was in that restaurant that I met Marian, the man who would later become my husband. Marian was 10 years older than me, a sweet and generous man who won me over with disarming patience. Next to him, I felt protected, loved like never before. His family was large and linked by deep affection, a world of warmth that initially enchanted me. Our life together was peaceful, built on a stable daily life that, as time passed, began to become restrictive for me. After years of engagement, marriage seemed almost automatic, the next logical step in an already mapped-out life. Maybe it was precisely that sweetness, which had once made me fall in love, that now weighed me down like a boulder. Or it was the predictability of his every gesture, the certainty that had once given me serenity and was now suffocating me. The need for something different grew inside me, something that made me feel alive. But Marian noticed nothing. He continued to treat me with the same dedication as always, as if nothing had changed. His family also continued to be a constant presence, especially his uncle Mihai. Mihai was different from all the other men in the family. Despite his 65 years, he had an energy that stood out. His hands marked by work, and his imposing presence gave him a rough charm. He was a countryman, used to hard work, and knew how to tell stories with a liveliness that enchanted anyone. When he walked into a room, he seemed to bring a different air with him, and I found myself inexplicably drawn to him. It was a subtle attraction, almost imperceptible but powerful. Every time he was around, a strange feeling ran through me, a mixture of curiosity and restlessness. Mihai had never paid me any particular attention. He always behaved with the politeness of an affectionate uncle. His calm irony and that smile that seemed to steal years from his age made him even more fascinating. Marian adored him. They spent a lot of time together, especially on weekends, when Mihai would come to help us with the housework or simply to share a glass of wine. In order not to fuel that strange tension I felt, I was always inventing something to do, trying to keep myself busy. Yet every excuse was just a way to escape myself. There is an afternoon that I remember clearly. On any given Sunday, Marian and Mihai were sitting on the sofa, immersed in old stories and laughter. I made coffee in the kitchen, but my gaze always returned to Mihai. It wasn't just the age difference that confused me. It was the way he moved, the confidence he exuded, the smile that always seemed to hide something. It almost seemed like there was an unspoken language between us, a dialogue made up of fleeting glances. As the days passed, that tension only grew. Mihai's every gesture, his every look, seemed to contain a hidden meaning, something I couldn't decipher. Marian, unaware of everything, continued his routine, always affectionate but also distracted by the thousand small daily worries. The passion between us had faded, a distant memory that he didn't seem to notice. and I felt more and more alone, trapped in an everyday life that no longer felt like mine. I had no one to confide in. My friends were far away, and they would never have been able to understand anyway. How could I explain that I felt something for my husband's uncle? It was an inadmissible thought, yet impossible to banish. Day after day, that tension grew, silent but inexorable, like an underground river. Then, everything changed one summer afternoon. Marion received an unexpected call from work, an emergency that forced him to leave immediately for a trip for a few days. He greeted me with one of his usual kisses on the forehead and a kind smile, promising that we would do something special when he returned. I watched as his car drove away, and the silence that fell on the house was almost oppressive. To distract myself, I decided to dedicate myself to the garden. The heat was suffocating, but I needed to do something to stop thinking. After a while, I heard Mihai's deep voice calling me from beyond the fence. He wanted to know if Marion was home. I told him he had to leave for work, trying to keep my voice steady while my heart was pounding inside me. Mihai approached with his usual confident step, and suddenly the garden seemed to me to become too small, almost suffocating. I didn't know what to expect from those days without Marion, but one thing was certain: that tension could no longer be ignored. Mihai approached the fence with his usual smile, offering to help me with the garden. "It seems like a lot of work in this heat," he said, in a gentle tone. I hesitated for a moment, but then nodded, accepting his help. We began working side by side, exchanging light words and fleeting smiles. Every now and then our eyes met, and that tension that I had tried to ignore came back to make itself felt, ever stronger. I tried to concentrate on work, but it was impossible. After a while, the heat became unbearable, and I decided to go inside the house to get some cold water. Mihai followed me without saying anything. The air conditioning enveloped us with immediate relief. He sat down at the kitchen table, his face still red from the sun, and thanked me for the water in a sentence that caught me off guard. He told me that Marion was really lucky to have a wife like me. I felt the heat creep up my neck and tried to avoid his gaze, but when I finally looked up, his eyes were still on me. This time, however, neither of them looked away. His warm, deep voice spoke my name, and the space between us suddenly seemed to narrow. I can't say exactly what happened at that instant, but the world around us became muffled. The kitchen, the light streaming through the window, everything seemed distant. There was only him, his breath, his gaze that enveloped me. Before I knew it, Mihai took my face in his hands with a delicate but confident gesture. I didn't shy away. His lips met mine in a slow, deep kiss. Want to know what happens next? Leave a comment with your hypotheses. My heart was beating so loudly that it seemed impossible that it couldn't be heard in the entire room. It was as if everything I had repressed for months, maybe years, had exploded in a single moment, a dam that had broken, letting out all that hidden desire. There were no words, only gestures. The kisses became more intense. His hands explored my body, and I let myself go, carried away by an unstoppable impulse. Any resistance I might have put up was now gone. Desire had taken over, and before we knew it, we found ourselves in the bedroom. Every step was a surrender, a total abandonment to those emotions that I had tried to suffocate for so long. Mihai lifted me delicately, placing me on the bed. rest was a succession of caresses, sighs, of a passion that seemed to have no end. Every contact was like a flame that ignited, consuming every rational thought. When it was all over, we stood in silence, still breathing heavily, as reality slowly began to sink back in. Guilt was starting to creep in, but not enough to make me immediately regret what had happened. I was still wrapped up in that whirlwind of emotions, unable to distinguish right from wrong. Mihai looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. He didn't speak, but the silence between us said it all. What had just happened could not be erased. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. After that first time, guilt became a constant shadow. Every time I looked at Marian, I felt dirty, unworthy of her love. I tried to maintain normality, not to let anything leak out, and Mihai seemed to do the same too. We avoided any unnecessary contact, trying to behave as usual. It almost felt like everything was getting back to normal, or at least we were trying to. A couple of weeks later, however, Marian proposed something that caught me completely off guard. One evening, while we were sitting in the living room, he told me that he would like to organize a holiday, just the three of us, me, him, and Mihai. He told me about a small mountain town far from the chaos of the city, an opportunity to relax and spend time together. I felt my heart tighten. The idea of spending such intimate time with Mihai, after what had happened, filled me with anxiety, but I didn't have the courage to say no. So, we started planning the trip. We arrived at a welcoming chalet surrounded by nature, with a breathtaking view of the mountains. It seemed like a perfect place, and I desperately tried to convince myself that everything would be okay. The first day passed peacefully, with walks and dinners together. Mihai behaved impeccably, without giving any sign that would reveal what had happened between us. But on the second night, everything changed. Marian, tired after a long day of hiking, went to sleep early. I stood in the living room, staring out the window at the starry sky, trying to calm my thoughts. That's when I heard Mihai's footsteps behind me. I turned and found his gaze on me, intense and full of the same tension I had already known. I tried to resist, to remind myself that it was wrong, that Marian was there, in the next room, but the desire was too strong. When Mihai took my hand, my body responded without hesitation. We moved in silence to a more secluded room in the chalet, away from where Marian slept. The sound of the door closing behind us seemed to seal a secret pact. That night was even more intense than the first time. The risk, the fear of being discovered, made everything more alive, more real. Every caress, every kiss, was a forbidden and irresistible experience. It was as if we had been overwhelmed by a force that we could not oppose, despite the knowledge of how wrong it was. When it was all over, while Mihai slept next to me, I lay awake, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. The guilt was back, stronger than ever, but along with it, a strange satisfaction, as if a part of me never wanted to stop living in that danger, in that forbidden emotion. The next morning, Marian woke us up with her usual smile, unaware of everything. I looked at myself in the mirror, trying to mask every trace of that night. The trip continued without further incident, and when we returned home, I found myself wondering how long I could continue like this. Part of me knew that Marian would never find out anything, that maybe I would be able to maintain this double life, torn between the sure love of my husband and the forbidden lure of her uncle. But I also knew that something inside me had changed forever, and I wasn't sure I'd ever find my way back. If you want to receive new videos of the series, write "I want the sequel" in the comments. If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to receive a preview of future publications. Thank you,